sorry, Mario, but your brother has brain cancer.
Should have been 1, 2, 3, but we're so less.
Radio broker.
Anybody even driving this thing? Is anybody even driving this thing?
So you may be asking, what do all of these video games and television programs have in common? If you have heard any of these songs through any of these instances, chances are you've heard the English musician Whitey. Whitey is the musical project of Nathan Joseph White, who is also responsible for writing and performing nearly every instrument to every song released under the Whitey name. Think of it as a solo project, sometimes with additional help. He is known for blending genres such as indie, electronica, post-punk, and alternative dance, with influences ranging from outside genres such as classical, jazz, as well as synth-pop and new wave. He is additionally recognized for his history as an independent artist, choosing to release his music through sites such as Bandcamp with complete creative control. His lyrics are at times cryptic, however a plethora of them deal on topics such as nihilism, corruption, heartbreak, becoming a different person, and even hope, though some of the themes can seem rather bleak. There are a number of motivational and uplifting songs from him as well. With a musical career spanning nearly 2 to 3 decades, Mr. White has indeed endured a ton of different things throughout its duration, for better or for worse, with moments of silence in between moments of fame, moments of loyalty and trust, and moments of betrayal, namely from the industry itself. Today's video will be an in-depth look into the history, musical career, and release catalog from Whitey. There admittedly isn't much known about the history surrounding Nathan White's early years of being a musician, before adopting the Whitey moniker in the 2000s, so I'll keep it brief. All that is known are the releases from the groups he was involved in during the 1990s. The most well-known group he was a part of being the Vibe Tribe, who also released music under the alias Global Method. All of these releases took a head-on approach to electronic music, as opposed to the mix of indie rock and fused tunes Whitey put out in the following decades. Instead, opting in for hardcore techno and acid house soundscapes that emerged from the late 1980s and early 1990s. Despite the abundance of projects and musical releases Mr. White was involved in, nothing truly materialized into a full-length album. Most of these releases also seem to have him referred to as Nathan Joseph Wonnacott, which is actually proven to be his real name. The Whitey alias he decided to use later on might have actually came from his stage name, Nathan White, around the late 90s, early 2000s. Though, for the remainder of the video, I'll just be referring to him as Nathan White, or simply Whitey, just because more people know him through those names. So we know that Whitey was involved in a long string of bands around this time that had this same acid house style. So what led him to making the music he does now? Well, it could be inferred that his musical direction supposedly changed upon arriving to the area of Shoreditch in London around 1997. He mentions in the incomplete Whitey lyric book that this city had a community of various different types of people who lived there, with most people knowing each other by sight. Reflecting the variety of people who lived in this city was the music scene, which welcomed anything from rock, pop, techno, jazz, hip-hop, etc. This scene was very much an open book. This variety of genres may in fact influence Whitey's genre bending in years to come. This brings me to his first true era of his. The light at the end of the tunnel is a train.
Non-stop, keep on coming.
In 2002, the world got its first taste of Whitey through a song, Why'd Have to Be Me, via the Sonic Mook Experiment 2 compilation, Future Rock and Roll. This compilation featured various other artists and songs with a similar indie-tronica and an alternative rock sound, laced with a punk edge to them, and Why'd Have to Be Me is no exception. Starting off with a buzzy lo-fi guitar and a crunchy drum beat, it soon develops a sinister tone thanks to the loud pulsating synths and eerie vocals chanting the title of the song, Why'd Have to Be Me. Although sonically simplistic and rough around the edges, its main charm are in fact those same attributes that give it its rough, almost punk sound. This track will officially be released as Whitey's second single a year later in 2003 through PPQ Records, before eventually being re-recorded and renamed YUH2BM2. Wow, that's a mouthful. Although a fan favorite in the Whitey community, and the song even appearing on an episode of The Sopranos, it didn't gain much commercial attention compared to Whitey's debut single, Leave 'Em All Behind, also released in 2003 through PPQ Records. Leave 'Em All Behind starts with a catchy synth loop, quickly inserting a punchy drum beat, and then cues the synth lead and guitar, with Whitey's vocals drowned out in the noise. It provided a nice danceable contrast to Why'd Have to Be Me's more sinister sounding guitars and synthesizers. His debut single was eventually re-released in 2004 through Regal Records, whose music is distributed through major labels such as Parlophone and Warner Records, making this one of the only times Whitey was signed with a major label. Re-released with new tracks like a reworked version of Just Another Animal, a B-side from his second single Why'd Have to Be Me, the single fortunately gained an underground cult following and has become a fan favorite, which led it to charting at number 165 on the UK singles chart in 2004. Whitey released one last promotional single before the release of his debut studio album in early 2005. That single was the double single, Non-Stop, A Walk in the Dark, which was released through 1234 Records, a London-based indie label. Despite the downgrade from a major label, this single surprisingly performed better on the UK singles charts, landing on number 67, and gained a similar cult following like Leave Them All Behind. Non-Stop was actually previously released on that aforementioned single, and features more of an organic rock sound compared to the electro-punk stylings of other singles. Keyboards take a backseat this time in favor of distorted guitar and a swing beat performed with drum brushes that give it sort of a vintage feel. Whitey's vocals also have more of a prominence in this track, where the previous ones he just mostly repeated the title of the song again and again and again. Granted, like a lot of his other early work, the lyrics are very vague and hard to make out at times. The other song, A Walk in the Dark, features more electronics and drum machines, but like Non-Stop, they don't take the forefront. Whitey's vocals also have a bigger presence in this song as well, though still a bit hard to make out. The lyrics do have a meaning to them, as explained through this Toasted interview.
A Walk in the Dark is just a kind of stalker track, I think. It's about, I think that was probably triggered off from realising that there's people that you see repeatedly when you go to bars and clubs that you never actually meet, but they're part of your kind of furniture.
Yeah.
Of
you see them every time.
Yeah, you see
never
them,
talk to them.
and you never ever talk to them. You know what I mean? And you'll forget them. One day they won't be there anymore, and you'll forget about them quite quickly, and you'll never realise they're gone. Yeah. They'll just kind of fade out and disappear. Which that's what that's about.
Do you really care then?
No, you know, of course these are strangers.
It's just a subject you thought I will write a song about.
Yeah, write a song about that.
These singles were being released from 2003 to 2005. Anticipation and hype grew for the up-and-coming artist to release his debut studio album, which was to be titled The Light at the End of the Tunnel is a Train. Wow, that's another mouthful. His debut album was released on March 21st, 2005 in the UK, featured the previously released singles, along with other brand new tracks, which offered more surprises than expected. Just like this album cover, which is genius.
It's on the same day, it looks like now.
Okay, the album is called a really long title. I think one of the longest titles ever. Let me have a look. The light at the tunnel, light of the end of the tunnel is a train. How did you come up with that one?
I don't know. I thought it was. It had a streak of black comedy in it. I quite like it. It's kind of, just when you think everything's all right, that's when you're really, really screwed. It's the basic idea.
Could you give an example for that?
A million, probably. Yeah.
But just one that really has to do with.
Life I've been completely screwed. Oh god, there's too many to mention. I don't know. Not off the top of my head. Maybe not. I'm not sure. I don't know what to say. Probably most of them I couldn't say to you.
First minute of this album is an intro with a pummeling drum beat laced with cowbell, electronic freakouts, and tense guitars, before giving in to the main song, In the Limelight. This would not be the first time Mr. White would feature an intro of sorts on an album, but I'm getting too ahead of myself. Walk in the Dark differs from its single release by having an extra reprised section added to the end of it. This section has more of a mellow tone and is noticeably quieter, with acoustic guitars and almost whispered singing, which gives an indicator of the tone of the next track, Can't Get Out, Can't Stay In. This track has a comparably softer sound as well, giving sort of a winter vibe to it, featuring sparkling keys intertwined with moody synths, soft vocals, and a drum machine loop, which you probably heard in 1,000 different indie songs.
Got a big plan, this mindset, maybe it's right at the right. In the basement, 'cause that punk is plagued by how.
Despite this, it's a great change of pace and is probably one of my favorite songs on the album, along with the next song, Tantrum, which is my top favorite. It's another softer track featuring another drum machine loop, which you've probably also heard before. Also featuring yet again, sparkling keys, as well as this droning synth that causes tension, giving it more of a mysterious vibe, until the chorus hits and changes it into more of a calming melody with lightly strummed guitars. There are other songs that go in a more rock direction yet again, like Ha 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 and Halfway Gone, that also have sort of a psychedelic influence as well, thanks to the electronics in each track. However, the bleakest and softest track is saved for last, the title track. The light at the end of the tunnel is a train, or T-Late OTAT. That's the acronym. Yeah. It featured primarily acoustic guitar, with the track starting off with guitar that's completely drenched in reverb, before paving way for another melancholic guitar melody that is surrounded with light drums and lo-fi production, and also vinyl cracks, as well as falsetto vocals on the chorus. The lyrics are basically what you would expect from a song called, well, The Light at the End of the Tunnel is a Train. As hauntingly beautiful as the song is as a closing track for this album, it does sort of feel like it overstays its welcome just a bit, as does a few other tracks on this album. Surprisingly, despite how uncommercial this album may have seemed, the album received commercial success in the indie sphere and gained critical acclaim from sites and magazines like Observer, Q, and Independent, who all praised the album's electro rock sound and even its moody and atmospheric moments as well, and reached top 50s lists in the UK and best of year lists worldwide. It was also my first exposure to Whitey's music, and I still enjoy the hell out of this record to this day, despite enjoying his other albums a bit more down the road. However, not all critics were impressed, as sites like Pitchfork gave more mixed reactions. Of course they did. Comparing the songs unfavorably to his previous work as a remix producer. You see, from 2004 to about 2008, Whitey was also gaining recognition from remixing popular artists such as Block Party, Cut Copy, and even Gang of Four. The Cut Copy one's pretty awesome. As well as relatively unknown artists like the Sex Machines. Who names their band that? He started off doing plenty of them during this era of his career. However, he suddenly stopped altogether following this next era of his career, which brings me to... success of the release of The Light at the End of the Tunnel is a Train, or I'll just call it his debut, in the UK, the album was naturally going to have a release in the US shortly after. Think again. It took almost a whole year to release his debut album in the US, eventually releasing on October 10th, 2006 on DMAC Records, another major label, which was founded by LA DJ himself, Steve Aoki, and hosts a variety of artists and bands like Block Party, Shit Disco, as well as Steve's own music, Zed, and Lil Jon. Interesting collection. Unfortunately, Whitey would not release any more music through DMAC or even 1234 Records, his UK label at the time. However, in 2006, he did release the lead single for his next record, Great Shakes. Released by yet another indie label known as Marquis Cha Cha, the single was titled Wrap It Up, and featured 2 songs which teased his new sound for this forthcoming album.
The idea on the first album was to give it a kind of moody, tense, simple sound, and so I took the tracks from the different types of music I did that fitted that idea. And with this one, the idea was to make it more I don't know, it was more song-based, it was slightly bigger sounding, so that again, I took it from the different types of music I made and I put it together. I didn't sort of go in this direction for this album.
Whitey took advantage of this desire to make the tracks on the upcoming LP more song-based by releasing his catchiest song to date, Wrap It Up. The song starts off with hard bass drum hits before giving into one of the most infectious guitar riffs in Whitey history. Gone is the moody electronic rock sounds of the last record, switching it out for a more catchy and accessible indie rock sound. There's still some synth freakout moments similar to In the Limelight, however, they do not dominate the entire track like the electronics featured on the debut. And speaking of the debut, the use of live drumming makes the song sound more lively as well, just like some of the best moments from that very record like Leave Them All Behind and Non-Stop. It also has cowbell, so automatic A+. Whitey expands his vocal dynamics on this track as well, with several moments where he goes from soft to having more of an attitude to his vocals, and even yelling. The lyrics seem to be about getting even with someone who has personally wronged you in some way, instead of letting your anger control you and looking more of a fool than that someone you're confronting.
This, along with any other lyric meanings I discuss, unless I state otherwise, are mostly my interpretation.
According to a comment on songmeanings.com, during a gig in Sydney, Whitey explained that the lyrics are based on a friend of his getting cheated on and advising her to be the bigger person in this situation.
By the way, I can't find any confirmation for this anywhere. I'll take the user's word for it though.
The song also came out with an online-only music video in 2008, and is only one out of the 2 music videos he ever officially released, with Non-Stop actually getting one way back in 2005, which aired regularly on MTV. The B-side of the single is titled I Made Myself Invisible, and is generally more self-contained than Wrap It Up's explosive nature, ditching live drums yet again for rapid electronic drum beats, fastly strummed acoustic guitar, ominous echoes, and soft vocals. The spooky keyboards and the uses of reverb give the track a creepy aesthetic, which fits the theme of the title since invisibility is a concept horror has dabbled in many times. However, the actual lyrics use it as a metaphor for being an outsider. Final minute of the song picks up the intensity, with the guitars on the song getting more distorted, adding live drums back, and Whitey getting more in your face with this delivery, which is an exciting way to end the song. Although his debut might have been his most recognized release of his, this era definitely had his popularity spiking the most, thanks to his music being featured in more media like Grand Theft Auto 4, The Sopranos, and Kitsune Mason Compilation 4, and additional press such as Alternative Press's issue of 100 Bands You Need to Know in 2007. It was a good time for publicity for Whitey, but a stressful and convoluted time in Whitey's career, which all started when his upcoming release, Great Shakes, was leaked online in summer of 2007 by an unknown individual, Kelku182.
Great Shakes is what it's called, or are you?
Yeah, that's the Lost album now. You know that's not coming out, don't you?
Why isn't that coming out?
Because it leaked too much on the internet. It leaked from the American end as well, thanks. I don't blame on you personally, but it's the version that's leaked was given to American A&Rs last September. And I know that because it had a couple of bonus tracks on that didn't appear on the version that was given to UK and European A&Rs. And within a matter of weeks it was online, and only A&Rs had it. And from there it went to loads and loads of BitTorrent sites. It did like 5, 12, 15,000 downloads quite quickly across the world, and effectively rendered it useless as not as a product, because that's a nasty word, but as something for me to put my own money into releasing and pressing, which is what I do. If you're watching this Kelku 182, I fucking hate you. I do, I hate him. He's the one that did it first. Because of him, everyone else did it. He's the thief. If that's the pseudonym of anyone that works at a record label and you're someone else's record label and you know he's called Kelku 182, there is a reward if you can identify him.
This wasn't helped by the fact that this leak caused him to lose all international licensing deals he had. It seemed around this time that the only things keeping this era alive were some of the post-Great Shakes releases like Wrap It Up EP in late 2007, featuring 3 songs from Great Shakes, and the Kitsune Mason Compilation 4, which featured the US bonus track of Great Shakes, Stay on the Outside, which gave the song some attention, but not as much as it would receive later on. This leaked album, along with his debut album, were eventually posted to YouTube in full in 2008 by an account named Low Stuff. For the longest time, this was the only way to listen to the album without legally downloading it. The first track of this leaked release is a 40-second intro, which contains a sample of an orchestral piece, Nights of Gladness, a waltz written by Irish composer Charles Ancliffe in 1912. This piece immediately cuts off at the start of the next track, Rats, which begins with a buzzing, distorted synth line that slowly increases in volume before being interrupted with the sudden howl from Whitey himself. The song shifts in its instrumental a few times throughout its duration, incorporating piano during the chorus and groovy guitars during the bridge, as well as spooky synths similar to I Made Myself Invisible, which hints towards the musical ambition and the more personal lyrics that the album would tackle. For example, the track Sweet Words for This Hour. It features catchy as hell keyboards, swelling pianos, hand claps, and a bridge with a seriously kick-ass guitar solo by live guitarist Julian Shaw Taylor. Speaking of kick-ass guitars, Cigarette has a guitar riff that is just as infectious as Wrap It Up, perhaps even more, and has a funky bass line which even takes center stage in one part of the song. However, one of the most standout parts of the track is the lyricism, which deals with over-depending on friends and people you surround yourself with, who constantly backstab you, or fuck him over, as he bluntly swears on the verses, even comparing his need for these people to a hole in the head, or like he needs another cigarette. Like his debut, there are plenty of surprises in the track listing as well. The song One by One really sticks out as a surprise by having orchestrated strings and drum brushes, with piano sprinkled over the bridge of the song before paving way for the second verse, and a surprisingly climatic final chorus. The song might have been the basis for future Whitey songs to incorporate string sections, and is a very decent first attempt at this style. There are more mellow and laid-back tracks on here, with songs like Never Enough and the final 2 tracks being fine examples of this. Speaking of the last track, Don't Blame This All on Me, focuses on more of a somber piano melody and lyrics about heartbreak and examining himself after the fact, which is made even sadder once you realize the lyrics in this track parallel the obsessive themes found on One by One, with Whitey pushing everyone and everything away to do everything for this one person, only to get rejected later on and have nobody and nothing left afterwards. The biggest surprises of all are the tracks Girl and Head in the Corner. The former track's instrumental is almost like a refined take on the electro rock formula on the first record, with another sinister bass line and addicting guitars, but now with more of an 80s new wave influence coming from the keyboards and drum machines, and lyrics that delve into a dangerous obsession with an online relationship, which is implied to have gone out of hand in some way. The latter track, Head in the Corner, is a simple song about the need for isolation from the people around you, using lyrics like "The silence is beautiful" to convey this. This song takes a heavier, energetic tone in the first verse and the chorus, and like Sweet Words, there's an awesome guitar part during and after the chorus. Things get quieter with the second verse and the outro to the song, which slows the song down as well, and is a beautiful ending to the song. For the longest time, Great Shakes had never gotten officially released, despite songs from the album and unreleased songs being featured on GTA 4, Gran Turismo 5, circulating on YouTube and MySpace. However, in 2012, the album was officially released in 2 volumes on Bandcamp. However, seeing as this era is only covering releases from 2006 through 2009, we'll get to these releases later in the video. Instead, let's discuss the album that actually never got an official release, and In December of 2007, Whitey was interviewed by Anthem magazine, where he gave out some useful info on Great Shakes, and announced a brand new album in production, Stay on the Outside, named after the bonus track from Great Shakes. The release date was stated to be early 2008, and was to have 11 tracks total, with it including the 5 best songs from Great Shakes, with some minor tweaks and edits. In February 2008, an EP was released titled Made of Night, through Marquee Cha Cha Records once again. 3 out of the 4 tracks were slated to be included in the album. Those tracks were Sweet Words for the Sour from Great Shakes, Not You Again, a minimal electronic remake of Nonstop from his debut album, and Made of Night, the title track from the EP, and quite possibly the longest song to date. Inching slightly over the 7-minute mark, yet it never feels like it overstays its welcome. The track's chilling, almost wintry opening keys are soon contrasted by heavy bass, rough-sounding guitars, and percussion before giving into, in my opinion, the best chorus Whitey has ever composed. Featuring those same keys that open the song, the chorus just feels like it explodes with overwhelming emotion, even if it isn't the loudest or even rockiest song he's ever made. I don't even know if I want to spoil any more of this song. Just listen to it. It's so good.
Crawling underneath the stone, so I curled up in a corner and I waited till the light was gone. Now there's a sign that says this way, I wonder if it's that way.
The final track on here, Shaking on a String, is a short, low-quality acoustic ballad, which eventually adds vocal and timpani overdubs. Whitey himself actually said on Facebook that he lost the original recording of this very song. Seven months later, in November 2008, another single was released through Marquee Cha Cha Records, Individuals. Yet still no info on Stay on the Outside album, besides the fact that it was still being delayed. Individuals nails this carnival aesthetic that tracks like Ha 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 were dabbling in years ago. With some impressive synth work, the lyrics are, to me, a parody of individualism and consumerist culture, though you probably wouldn't get that from the unreleased music video for this song, which is just strange. Whitey's vocals sound lively in this track, along with some simplistic yet captivating background vocals from members of a group called The Broken Hearts. To get off track for just a second, in 2008, Whitey collaborated with Nisha and Amber Jane, who were part of a group who made jazz-infused indie rock called The Broken Hearts. For all I've researched, this group only released one single in 2007, titled Black Hat, featuring the songs Black Hat, featuring Whitey on vocals, and even had a music video, and Blanco. They also had a SoundCloud page that has been inactive for many years now, which had a song named Count Those Freaks, which also had a music video which has since been lost to the sands of time. Sweet. Fortunately, 2 of these songs would be redone and repurposed for later Whitey releases. Anyways, where was I? B-Side Do That Nothing is a collaboration with English producer and DJ Errol Alkin, who produced this track and was responsible for the electronic drums and thumping bassline. It has a pretty nice groove and vague lyrics. Some think the lyrics are a tongue-in-cheek criticism of rave culture, though others take this song away as an apathetic escape from reality, similar to another song that will be mentioned later on, Saturday Night Ate Our Lives. Both songs were assumed to appear on the new record as well, until it kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed until nothing really came of this Stay on the Outside album. Years ago, I was under the impression that this album didn't even actually exist, and that the songs on it were left unfinished. Though surprisingly enough, in June of this year, that proved not to be the case, as the Stay on the Outside album was unofficially released via YouTube and Discogs. I don't exactly know how this happened, but hey, it did. I won't spend too much time on this release, seeing as this was never even supposed to release.
I see gray skies ahead.
The album opens up with Wrap It Up, which has this weird intro at the beginning of it that for some reason reminds me of elevator music. Like promised, quite a few great shake tracks appear, along with previous singles. However, strangely enough, Sweet Words for the Sour and Not You Again don't appear as promised. And ironically enough, the Stay on the Outside song doesn't even appear either. Though I'll get to that song later, don't worry. The only other songs of note are The Gutter, Did I, and Please Let It Be Different This Time. Deadeye is actually a remake of another unreleased Whitey song, Broken, which featured an unauthorized sample from a poem by famous poet Charles Bukowski, which might have been the reason why he remade the song into what it is now known as Deadeye's On the Lost Summer album. Before then, his first attempt at a remake was this version of the song, Deadeye. It features an instrumental identical to Broken, but with very distorted vocals in place of the sample. Please Let It Be Different This Time features an upbeat melody and catchy synths, which contrast with the downbeat lyrics presented. The song The Gutter I'll mention later, however the latter two songs have never been released in any capacity.
Or have they?
Okay, perhaps it's time to talk about Whitey and his live band. Ever since Whitey's initial splash in the public around 2003 and 2004, he's had a live band play with him at gigs, playing with bands and musicians from LCD Sound System, to Peaches, to even Iggy Pop. The original lineup would be Whitey on vocals and other instruments, Will Blankard on drums, Scott Fairbrother on bass, and Patrick Walden on guitar, before being replaced by Julian Shaw Taylor on guitar. The lineup changed once again, adding Rory Phillips for keys and additional percussion. Robert Harder was also the sound engineer for these live shows as well. He also produced Whitey's past and future albums, so he's an integral part of Whitey's history as an artist. His live lineup eventually split sometime in 2007. However, besides just being live members, they each also aided Whitey in recordings as well, especially during this and the previous era, though Whitey still handled most of the instrumentation present, which was more apparent in later eras as these members started getting featured in less recordings, though all of them are still on good terms to this day. There are limited live clips on YouTube, however his most popular clips being the Summer Case 2008 clips, which featured a pretty different lineup for the most part, besides Rory. Anyways, there are actually clips on YouTube of the live band playing Deadeye and Please Let It Be Different This Time, before the whole album got unofficially released this year. And it was live in the same festival too, but they're both in low quality. But I guess you can't say you couldn't listen to them before. After the original lineup split, Julian and Scott went on to form Adam and Evil in 2010. Oh yeah, and speaking of 2010,
finally, a shorter era.
in 2009 was the first year Whitey didn't release any music. Not an album, not a song, nothing. Which was extremely worrisome considering Whitey announced the year before that Stay on the Outside would be his final album. And well, it never came out. Well, I mean, it still never came out, but it wasn't officially canned either. Get it? Canned laughter? Okay, I'm so funny, nah. Anyways, Whitey wasn't totally radio silent in 2009 though. He was still fairly active on MySpace. There were even times where he would change his status from no label to major label, only to change it back to no label. However, little did we know that year he would record his upcoming album, Canned Laughter, in secret. With little to no promotion, this album was eventually released independently over the internet on April Fool's Day 2010. However, this album was no joke. It was the follow-up to the unreleased Great Shakes, and the official follow-up to his debut album. Finally. Around its release, Whitey made the following statement online. The future of music is independent, and labels must learn to strike fairer deals to keep their slice. Canned Laughter is actually Whitey's first album that was released without any music labels behind it, making this, along with most later albums, self-released. Which goes along with the statement he made that implied his past difficulties with record labels, especially around the Great Shakes era. This album is a departure from Light at the End of the Tunnel and Great Shakes, as Whitey went for a new aesthetic, ditching previous indie rock sounds for a synth-pop sound while incorporating other genres as well. This album also didn't feature as many contributions from Julian, Scott, and Will from previous albums either, though all of them appear on the song Genius of the Crowd, and the production is, yet again, handled by Robert Harder, who produced previous albums as well. This all created an album that was even more ambitious and bigger sounding than Great Shakes, which was already more varied than the debut. The lyrics mainly focus on the bad side of life, revolving around nihilism, ego, politics, and poverty. The promo picture even advertises the album as cheerful ditties about death, politics, and your imminent extinction. From the harsh synth trance of the first track, Dinosaur, to the upbeat melodic piano of the final track, Twisted Sheets, this album features great variation from one song to the next. The album begins with yet another intro featuring laughter from various people and contains music that just gets louder and louder until it cuts off for a few seconds, until the actual first song starts, Dinosaur. Like the dynamics of the intro, the quiet acid synth line that starts off slowly crescendos and builds up for a minute before giving into a guitar and synth breakdown, with Whitey's vocals finally coming in a few seconds later. The chorus of the song's pretty epic as well, featuring even more catchy synth lines that just shred throughout, and even something that sounds like choral arrangements after the chorus as well. This is an incredible opening track for the album and hints at the greatness that is to come. And that's not even mentioning the lyrics yet. The track, of course, features an overtly nihilistic theme and also centers around the topic of death and the end of humanity as well as previous life forms. Before the release of the album, Whitey posted the lyrics to the song, along with others, to a now deleted WordPress page where he got more in depth into the lyrics. I'll leave a link below to an archive in case you want to dig any deeper into the meanings of these songs. The following track, Time's Up, features more psychedelic synths that remind me of the carnival feel of previous tracks like Individuals, as well as heavy drums that differ from the synth-pop beats of the last track. Later in the song, some really majestic strings appear amidst the madness of the track. Whitey posted the following in his blog. This song was an attempt to visualize the current state of the world through the imagery of the chaotic end of a selfish and hedonistic party. To me personally, I think it's implying the chaotic end of humanity, and we're the selfish and hedonistic party he was referring to. This would make sense considering the extinction theme in the previous song. A lot of the themes it featured on the other songs seem to connect with each other as well. Fan favorite Whitey track, Count Those Freaks, like previously mentioned, was a Broken Heart song. However, on this album, the instrumental is in a different key, and features Whitey's vocals instead of Amber and Isha's, as well as additional instrumentation as well. This track is supposedly inspired by 1920s swing and jazz music, and it isn't hard to see how with the big band arrangements featured. The lyrics have a hopeless nature to them, with Whitey saying that the evil, or the freaks in this case, and humanity, is outnumbering the amount of people who are trying to be a positive change in the world. At least that's what I take it to be. This track, although strange to place after two electronica-tinged tracks, shows that Whitey wanted to experiment with more sounds and ideas on this record. Songs like this show that this mindset really paid off. The next track, And When Your Sun Goes Down, You'll Know, is one of the longer cuts on the album, about as long as the opening track in fact, but is just as epic as well. Starting off with hand claps and another tense piano melody before integrating Whitey's warped vocals and electronic beats. However, the chorus hits, and Whitey delivers one of his most instantly memorable refrains. To me, this song seems to be towards someone that Whitey personally knows that is perhaps oblivious and ignorant to the problems of the world and society, just like everyone else they know. I personally interpret the sun going down as a metaphor for maybe the world ending, making this sort of a I told you so song towards that person that didn't realize the world was just getting worse and worse. This song also utilizes strings yet again in the chorus, bridge, and outro, and the orchestrated swells are honestly the track's best parts. They're just so freaking gorgeous. The Genius of the Crowd is an odd track. The song starts off with a minute-long piano prelude that builds itself up before giving into twinkling keys, guitars, and drums that sound very similar to the drums in Cigarette. The first half of the track is completely instrumental, however the final half features poet Charles Bukowski reciting his poem, The Genius of the Crowd. I guess Whitey really wanted Charles on a track after his song Broken, also featuring him, went unreleased. This is considered one of Whitey's more experimental moments. It is skeletal in its instrumentation, and doesn't feature any catchy attributes like other Whitey songs. This is also one of the few songs where Mr. White himself doesn't sing. Although first-time listeners will probably be turned off by this track style, with more listens, this track becomes more intriguing, especially in its lyricism.
Beware the average man, the average woman. Beware their love. Their love is average, seeks average, but there is genius in their hatred.
The song that follows afterwards is Liars, Vipers, Jokes and Fakes, probably the most direct song in terms of its meaning and content. It starts cheerful enough, with bright synths and even steel drums that both give a carefree, summery beach feeling before polarizing this with hard-hitting live drums and lyrics that take on more of a political tone, discussing political parties and leaders that will do anything to fulfill their own agenda, even if it means actively controlling, manipulating, or even harming people below their position of power.
Sounds kind of familiar.
An exciting synth and drum breakdown occurs before the synths from before are gone, and are replaced with some dirty bass guitar and aggressive drums, before eventually adding the keyboards back in near the end. Send Out the Clowns is yet another track with a psychedelic aesthetic and trippy keyboards. Its carnival vibe does actually make sense given the title of this song. My takeaway from this song is that it's directed towards media and entertainment that distract us from the ever-worsening world we live in. This is a subject Whitey would delve into once again in a later album. Though still pretty trippy, there's also this really calming quality about this song in particular. If you thought the only thing about Whitey that was Disney related was his logo font, then the beginning of this track might prove otherwise. Well, at least I'm getting a Disney sound from the first minute and a half of this track. The next song, I Had a Wonderful Night, it just wasn't this one, opens with a captivating ukulele part, soon backed by elegant strings and a sparkly xylophone, before soon adding galloping drums, and then completely cutting away to a synth solo before adding the earlier instrumentation back with Whitey's vocals coming in, as well as adding some bells and whistles like a thunder sound effect and pitch-shifted vocals near the end of the track. This all proves that the ambitious and grandiose nature he was going for succeeded, as everything mentioned comes together to create something truly special. The lyrics seem to focus on Whitey's more pessimistic view of life, comparing his view to someone else's more positive view of life. It should also be mentioned that the title of the song originally comes from a variation of this phrase Whitey had used as his MySpace bio in 2007. He also used another variation of this phrase in a note on the back of the sleeve from his 2008 Made of Night EP. Like its name suggests, the Up sound for the Down People is a more hopeful and uplifting song in comparison to the bleak lyrics and themes of the rest of the record. He states in his blog that his inspiration for the lyrics was his desire to make a loser's national anthem, and that despite the troubles and low points, Whitey, you, or anybody might experience, both mentally and financially, you can still find happiness and comfort in yourself. What makes this song really stick are its use of keyboard chords, punchy drums and bass, and Las Vegas-esque synths that are featured in the repeated chorus on the song. Shortest and most easygoing track is Save for Last, Twisted Sheets. It's led only by light drums, piano, strings, and Whitey's vocals. The track warns us in this song to be careful with the few people you need in your life, as they could go tomorrow. He says without these people providing comfort from the stresses of real life, he can't sleep and can't escape the world anymore. Despite how brief this song is, it does leave a good lasting impression on the listener. While all songs this time hell even a decade ago, were not known to most people, and the album not achieving commercial success. Can't Laughter proved that Whitey was really capable of making music that was larger than life. He tackled challenging issues skillfully. In recent years, this album started gaining a cult following in the Whitey community, and it's not hard to see why. It is, by far, my favorite album of his, with Great Shakes coming in a close second. Anyways, right around this album's release, it was revealed that Canned Laughter would also get a CD and vinyl release. This didn't happen right away, as shortly after its release, Whitey announced a follow-up to the record, aptly titled Canned Laughter Volume 2, set to be released in late 2010, resulting in a double CD release and vinyl release as well. However, like another album, it kept getting delayed and delayed until Whitey officially said this release would not happen due to budget and time constraints. Despite this, news about this supposed follow-up emerged a year later, bringing me to the next era.
What you do back on you.
Although in 2011, Whitey had not released anything yet again, some notable things did happen this year. For one, some unspecified time this year, he removed all of his music from music streaming platforms like iTunes, Spotify, and many others. He has stated numerous times in the past his dislike for these streaming platforms, with his dislike being mostly directed towards their business policies and how much they pay musicians, which admittedly isn't very much. He has recently had a change of heart when it comes to these services. We're not to that point of the documentary yet, so for right now, his music isn't on Spotify and iTunes. In November, he posted a 7-minute rough demo preview of an upcoming unnamed album of his on YouTube, which many assumed to be the shelved Canned Laughter Volume 2. The preview offered a taste of what was to come. Whitey seemed like he was still continuing to refine the sort of synth-pop new wave direction Canned Laughter took on some tracks. But the album also seemed to hint at a darker sound as well, with some more danceable songs being sprinkled in between. The packaging shown in the video seemed intriguing as well. In the description, Whitey revealed that the album currently had an American record label deal, but no European deal. Though sadly in actuality, nothing would come of either of these deals in the end. He also revealed through the description of the video, and over on MySpace, that he had a Facebook page now as well, though he wouldn't start posting until early 2012. During the first quarter of 2012, Whitey announced some exciting news on Facebook and MySpace to make up for his music's removal off streaming platforms. He stated he would re-release his debut album and Canned Laughter independently over Bandcamp, each with rare or unreleased tracks and demos from those respective eras.
For those who don't know, Bandcamp is a platform where fans can directly financially support artists, which was probably the reason why Whitey favored it more than any other streaming service at the time.
That wasn't good news already. He stated he would officially release his last Great Shakes album, and not one, but 2 volumes, with the second volume containing yet again rare or unreleased tracks and demos from this very era. And if that wasn't enough, Whitey released a surprise new album in May, titled Lost Summer, which was the very album he teased the previous year. 2012 seemed to be the golden age of Whitey, and a great time to be a Whitey fan. Before I discuss the album this era is named after, I do want to give a brief look into the Bandcamp re-releases of his back catalog. Every release seems to be remastered in some way, with Canned Laughter even sporting transitions and segues in between songs that make the album feel even more connected, making this the definitive version. The Light at the End of the Tunnel has 6 bonus tracks. Just Another Animal, The Awful Truth, and Two-Face all originate as B-sides from his early singles, Leave 'Em All Behind, and Why You Have to Be Me. The song Play Me was actually posted on the MySpace in 2008 as a rare Whitey track, and the songs Shut Up Look Happy and Poor Thing were never even released before. These bonus tracks maintain the raw electropunk energy of the rest of the debut, with the exception of Poor Thing, which is probably the closest Whitey has ever done to a blues song. Two-Face also has become a favorite in the community, and is probably one of the heaviest songs he's made. All of these bonus tracks are worthy additions to Whitey's catalog, though some other unreleased tracks around this era are absent, even from this edition of the album, which have all been actually publicly released just this year.
Don't say a word,
On March 23rd, 2012, the same day the Light at the End extended version was released, Great Shakes was finally officially released in 2 volumes. The first volume was basically the leaked version we got years ago, but with some minor differences, so there's not a lot to say. However, Volume 2 is a different story. Volume 2 contains some already released songs already discussed, like Individuals, Do the Nothing, Made of Night, which was drunkenly added last minute, and
we'll get to that soon, baby.
And an alternate version of the Broken Heart song, Black Cat. However, there are still plenty of surprises in the track listing as well. Blah is a song that was previously released in some fashion through the Gran Turismo 5 soundtrack in 2010, and kind of reminds me of In the Limelight, which was funnily enough featured on Gran Turismo 4. What's Wrong with People Part 1 was also another song, posted as a rare Whitey track on MySpace in 2008, and even got another version on this very album, titled What's Wrong with People Part 2. However, a song that was actually never released, Full of Dust, is a more moody and low-key track that Whitey supposedly dedicated to the worst people he ever knew. Another previously unreleased cut is Goodbye Crocodile, which was supposedly a demo of sorts. It's another jazz-styled song that could have easily been a Broken Heart song as well. It also has tap dancing at the beginning. Tap dance! Although not my favorite song of his in this style, it's still pretty fun and groovy track. The Gutter, which was originally supposed to appear on Stay on the Outside, and has a very spacey instrumental. The synths on this track really soar, the beats are danceable as hell. There's some drunk crowd singing down on the chorus. Although playful, the song has a very strong nihilistic tone to it, with a smidge of sarcasm to the side. And then there's the song Stay on the Outside. What can I say? It's the song that was a bonus track, an album, Whitey's catchphrase, and his most popular song thanks to Breaking Bad and Astro Soup. It has an awesome bass line and overall smooth beginning section before soon transitioning to an aggressive ending with blasting guitars and ending the whole song with that same bass line that started it. There's a reason why people love this song, even those who aren't in the Whitey community. This is definitely a defining song in Whitey's career, but you know what, just listen to the damn song, my words won't do it justice. And finally, let's mention his mystery track. Originally upon the album's initial release, Goodbye Crocodile was the final track on the album. A few days later, Made of Night was supposedly added to the album, except it was a completely different track that was mistakenly titled Made of Night. Later, he eventually fixed this error, replacing it with the actual Made of Night track. But this very track's name was never revealed, and wasn't even accessible to listen to, until it got posted to YouTube by yours truly. Ha! Definitely one of his more spacier tracks, like The Gutter, has a rhythm that is reminiscent of the Lost Summer song. Speaking of similarities, the refrain later in the song is also similar to a refrain to an earlier song of his, Never Enough. Anyways, that was a lot of songs, eh? Well now, here's some more during this era that didn't appear on either volume for whatever reason.
Stop, you keep on coming. Nowhere to stop you coming. Anyone, anywhere else seems better to me. But pulling on the strings? Why make a machine designed for nothing? Fall down, rise again. I let nothing. I love my ears, my
Canned Laughter extended version was planned on being released early April, but was pushed back a few weeks, possibly due to the fact that he kept uploading the wrong version of the album onto Bandcamp, which has a different mix than the common version we hear. Previously mentioned, there were added transitions, as well as 4 unreleased bonus tracks, with 2 tracks, The Friend and The Wheel. Both, of course, utilize strings, though The Friend is definitely more piano-based, and is another track of his pertaining to the subject of online communication. It should also be noted that the piano melody is extremely similar to the melody of yet another song he posted onto MySpace years before, titled Fall Down, Rise Again. The dedication similarly focuses on piano, and is unsurprisingly one of his more uplifting songs. Though on the polar opposite, tracks like The Wheel and Who to Be are more nihilistic in nature, especially with the latter's opening lyrics, Yesterday's no more real than a dream. Speaking of Who to Be, it's probably one of his most underrated tracks, and deserves a lot more attention. Everything about its musicality and themes honestly really connects with me. It's honestly just so good! It should also be noted that the Bandcamp preview of this album before the release listed a song titled The Creeps, and was a planned instrumental that replaced The Friend in the track listing. Whitey has never released this song, and I can't find anything else about it, so I'll just move on. Now it's time to go over the album you've been waiting for, Last Summer. I promise it won't take as long as last time, hopefully. This album starts off with, you guessed it, an intro, which actually has a name, its name being Civilization, and uses a really warped version of Also Sprach Zarathustra, famous for being featured in 2001, A Space Odyssey. It's an intentionally busy intro with some very weird and interesting sound effects, like the Wilhelm scream and a woman moaning. Whitey states how he came up with the idea of the intro and the first actual song on the album, Nobody Made the Monster, on his handy dandy WordPress page. Thank you very much, Internet. Nobody Made the Monster features some demented synths and a huge breakdown on the chorus with the haunting refrain, watch what you do, back on you. I really like the dark mood this song gives off. It's almost like Dinosaur's evil twin from that last album, which shows, like Canned Laughter, Last Summer ain't messing around either. Brief and Bright begins with trotting drums and a swell guitar phrase that is eventually repeated with booming synths. The twinkling chorus and lyrics to the song give it a positive, uplifting feel. However, the history of the song is actually quite interesting. Supposedly, a long time ago in the galaxy far, far away, he discovered a poem by Byron while dating someone who's similarly interested in his works. The poem goes as follows: and if it must be brief and bright, a moment's lightning in the dark, then we should dive into this night, like it's the only one we've got. This poem stuck with him, so he decided to make a song around this poem, even including it as the last verse of this very song. The song's People and The Empty Man are the atmospheric and minimal cuts on the album. Despite most of them carrying the same mood as one another, they surprisingly have quite a few differences. The former features an organ and thumping bass line, while the latter features more guitar and piano. People uses Plato's famous allegory of the cave and combines it with a wandering nighttime feel, as Whitey describes it in his blog. While Whitey states that Empty Man deals with more personal and deeper topics pertaining to himself as a person. To cap it off, People quickly became one of Whitey's most popular tracks, and is agreed to be one of the best songs on the album, while The Empty Man is stated as one of his more underrated tracks from his discography. Saturday Night, Ate Our Lives tackles the topic of music being an escape from the grim reality of our world. It was also the only song from Last Summer to get a single release at all. It's not hard to see why, as it's definitely the standout from the album, and is probably the most danceable and 80s influenced song from the record as well, along with some of the other songs as well that do the same thing, like the title track Last Summer and Get By, the song Whitey actually performed alongside Rory Phillips while drunk, so don't even try to make sense of the lyrics. The final song on the album, See You Next Time has an instrumental melody that always gives me nostalgia whenever I listen to it. Its guitar tones and synth melody have a cheerful yet bittersweet feeling to them. The lyrics discuss hopes for tomorrow, even if today wasn't the greatest. I think this closing track is one of the best Whitey has ever made to date, and is definitely a personal highlight for me. Speaking of highlights...
It isn't real, it's not enough.
Dead Eyes, the song that finally got made after two other versions, Broken and Dead Eye, were left on the cutting room floor. The instrumental is very similar, but also kinda different as well. The production on this version is clearer. Whitey's vocals are haunting and slow some parts, and taunting on the chorus. It is easily Lost Summer's most aggressive song, with drums that are just brutal, in a good way. Although I didn't care much for this song my first few listens of this album, it has grown on me considerably in recent times, especially in the lyrical department, which is a commentary on corruption and advertising. This album definitely lived up to the hype it was given in 2011 and 2012, and contains some of Whitey's most memorable moments, as well as some of his most underrated gems as well. Unsurprisingly, its synth rock fusions had won many fans over during this golden age. Not only did Saturday Night 8 Our Lives get a single release, but a ton of music from this album and previous albums got featured in the 2012 comedy drama film Revenge for Jolly. The most interesting Whitey song choices being a scrap version of his song Girl, and another being an unreleased song of his, The High Dive, which I wasn't admittedly able to find. However, things got even more interesting with the announcement of yet another album in December of this year, which brings me to Get ready for this one, folks. This era is really gonna be timeline based. In late September 2012, Whitey stated he was already working on new music, a new EP to be exact. In mid-October, he revealed some information, like where he was going to record it, how long the recording sessions were taking, and how many songs were going to show up on the EP in question. No more was said about new music until December, when Whitey posted a link to a Kickstarter project he had made. Although I'll leave a link to the site in the description, I'll do my best to summarize everything on the page. The Kickstarter project revolved around a few main components: his upcoming release, Bare Bones, physical releases for his back catalog, and touring. Bare Bones was an upcoming LP that Whitey was going to release in 2013. He stated he had recorded a set of 13 tracks, everywhere from London to Los Angeles, and was described to be raw, more live, urgent, and personal than previous Whitey albums. On New Year's Eve, he even released a demo of a track that was to be featured on this very record, titled No More Right or Wrong, a slow burn of a track that absolutely perfected the electronic soundscapes of previous albums, and was a good sign for this record.
Okay, but what is the Kickstarter money going towards?
You may ask.
It can't just be going towards the record. Whitey's done good for himself by releasing stuff on Bandcamp, right?
Well, yes and no. Whitey explains on the Kickstarter page that being an independent artist has drawbacks as well. Not having a record label to back you leaves him only spending the recording aspect of the record, with no more money left to spend on other aspects such as album promotion, physical copies such as CD and vinyl, and touring equipment, rehearsal, and, well, the live shows themselves. This project, however, was the solution to these problems and situations, and was guaranteed to give cool extra stuff to the backers of the project, such as limited edition merch and CD/vinyl sets. The success of this project was the beginning of a great 2013 for Whitey and gang. Well, did it succeed? Absolutely. It actually went well over its £16,000 goal, with over 400 backers. It was the success that everyone, especially Whitey, could have dreamed of. In early 2013, Whitey announced he would continue working on the Bare Bones LP in Vancouver, and would give out various updates over Facebook throughout the year, even teasing some possible album art as well. In mid-2013, however, he revealed he had moved from different studios and would now settle in Venice Beach to finish recording the album. It was also around this time he stopped using MySpace after the site's redesign practically wiped old messages, photos, and music from the site. Decision that has baffled many people to this day, including Whitey himself. In August of this year, Whitey posted a link to a limited edition vinyl of his previously released song, No More Right or Wrong, though I can't actually find anything on it on sites like Discogs, so I'm not sure if this release ever actually went through. The following month, he apologized for the time it was taking for the album to be finished. However, he promised that the main bulk of the record was completed. In late October, while announcing he was finishing up the album, one of his biggest musical influences, Lou Reed, had passed away. So, during a rough storm that very night, he decided to record a cover of Lou Reed's song, Waves of Fear, a deep cut from his 1982 album, The Blue Mask, in tribute of his legacy. This cover carries a similar post-punk and psychedelic tone as the original, with even more of a melancholic vibe to it. November came, and a network, known as Betty TV, requested to license Whitey's music for free. You probably know what's gonna happen. Yep, that's right. He of course rejected it, like any sane musical entity would do. I mean, his music was not only his passion, but his livelihood as well. He stated it was absolutely unreasonable for companies to pay others professionally without paying to license music. He posted this on Facebook, but soon got reposted to other outlets like Twitter and got big coverage from the press as well, like The Guardian and BBC. Needless to say, this post became viral overnight and garnered a ton of respect from journalists, musicians, and music consumers alike, even bringing him new fans as well. Also this month, he said he would also finally release Stay on the Outside.
Okay, he was just joking, but it makes it funnier that
it eventually did.
Despite the fact that Whitey stated he was nearly done with Bare Bones, he posted in early 2014 about getting with producer Stephen Hague for additional recording sessions, who is notable for producing albums from famous bands and acts like New Order, Public Image Limited, and Blur. He soon revealed in an update in October of this year that the extra delay was because he was dissatisfied with the final product in 2013. So he decided to start anew, with the record now incorporating more influences from the Beatles, the Kinks, and Electric Light Orchestra, mixed with rough guitar, hard electronics, and tough live drums, as Whitey puts it. In this October update, he also announced he was nearing completion and was to drop a single and music video soon. In an unspecified time this year, though, he did announce he had lost his hearing for a short amount of time and was growing ill as well, which could have slowed progress on the album down as well. But what mattered more was his health and safety. It was definitely a hard time for Mr. White, but thankfully he picked himself back up the following year, 2015, which gave us exciting news. On March 1st, 2015, Whitey dropped a surprise collection of 7 songs of demos and rejects, while supposedly drunk. This album was of course called 7. 4 of these songs, Dog and Wolf, Fight the Feeling, Let's Fake Love, and When the Lights Went Out, were all recorded in 2013, while 3 of the other tracks, Death AM, Let It Over Gold, and Thank You, were all recorded in 2014, indicating that they may have in fact been rejects from the Bare Bones album he was working on during that time frame. Despite this, the album is surprisingly celebrated as Whitey's finest collection of songs to date, and the variation from track to track gives each song their own feel and identity. Even the album art is amazing. While the previous couple records have been influenced by synthpop and new wave, and carried a much more serious, almost dystopian tone. 7 is more instantly catchy, with an 80s-90s alternative indie rock aesthetic. Sonically, aesthetically, and maybe even objectively, this is probably his best work. Although only 7 tracks, Whitey uses this as a way to proclaim, all killer, no filler. Every track on the album has a distinctive quality to them that makes them each stick out. Death AM uses synths and guitars that just roar after the first verse. What's interesting about this track in particular is his WordPress page that separates the lyrics in sections, which each represent the time of day. The intro and first verse take place during night, the first pre-chorus and chorus takes place during dawn, and the second verse to the end takes place in the morning, which goes along with the lyrics of each section as well. Fight the Feeling is another track with new wave synths, but unlike Death AM, which puts more emphasis on guitar, Fight the Feeling is longer and more electronic based, with the synths featuring effects that make it feel like it's jumping throughout the whole song. The song talks about not letting your feelings take complete control over you in situations you don't have control over. The more rock-spirited tracks also vary from each other as well. Dog and Wolf starts on a repetitive guitar melody at the beginning. However, the great thing about this track is that the melody builds up throughout the song, adding extra instrumentation and distortion, and increases your suspense even more as it gets heavier and Whitey's vocals grow more intense until he finally shouts the phrase, "show your teeth" multiple times at the end. It's the heaviest song, and its build-up makes it a rewarding listen. Let's Fake Love for some reason reminds me of 60s pop. Acoustic guitar is featured on this song more than any other on the album, while boinging keyboards play. The song contains itself in the verses for the most part. However, when the chorus hits, it gets really exciting and more intense, until the song unleashes itself during the outro of the song, with Whitey actually screaming the lyrics near the end, proving Whitey has more of a dynamic range than people usually give him credit for. The lyrics themselves speak of heartbreak, though they're not too specific with this concept. Some fans think it's about being cheated on, while others think it's about a one-night stand, where Whitey or the other person accidentally gets too attached near the end. And then there's Lead Over Gold, my favorite song on the album, and one of my top 5 songs from him in general. To me, the track is like a rock journey, with the song starting off with just guitar and drums, soon adding bass, Whitey's vocals, and even bells later on. Like Let's Fake Love, what sells me on this song is the explosiveness of the chorus, which is one of the catchiest he's ever made. It contains one of my favorite lyrics from him. Now it's time to punch the clock. Although the meaning of this song is debatable, there's something motivational and uplifting with lyrics like these. Guitar solo soon follows, and it's somehow even better than the one featured on Sweet Words. Unsurprisingly, it's also performed by Julian, who always delivers on kick-ass solos apparently. Anyways, verse 2 takes the volume down just a notch, only to get in your face once again with the bridge. Then there's the outro of the song, which is not only addicting, but also a great change of pace for the song, because it feels like it comes out of nowhere, yet just feels right for the song's conclusion as well. Songs like this really make me want to go out and do something larger than life, kind of like the song itself. The album closes off with 2 ballad tracks, which definitely leave the album on a high note. Thank You for Letting Me Down is a piano-driven track with a ton of energy backed behind it. The oldest track on the album, which was first conceived way back in 2008, Whitey wrote on his lyric page that he was disappointed with the final product. Although I personally feel like he succeeded at making a song that was a glorious, cathartic, joyous 2 fingers to your enemies, like how Whitey describes he imagined it on his blog. Fuck you anthems aren't exactly fresh or original, which makes the song even better, as in spite of that, the song still feels like it has a unique style, especially for Whitey.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me down.
Even that track won't prepare you for the emotional, masterful final track on the record, When the Lights Went Out. Probably the moodiest track on the entire album as well, focusing on organs, synths, and lyrics about introspection after heartbreak on the first leg of the track, which eventually adds guitars into the mix. The guitars on the track get more distorted as the chorus hits, and gets more intense until the track stops itself for a second. The emotional dials eventually turn to 11 when strings come in and start tugging at my own strings, my heartstrings. And Whitey seems to let this person go who broke his heart and try to become a better person as a result of this. The final lyrics on the track, Goodbye, are a suitable end to this roller coaster experience of an album. This track in recent years has gained Whitey many new fans because of it being featured in the credits of a source mod fan game named Terminal 7, a game which is based on an inside joke from the YouTube channel Vinesauce. As a result of this new popularity, many old fans have also developed a new appreciation for this album, even if we didn't get bare bones yet. Like the saying goes, it's not the album we asked for, but it's the one we needed. Especially after a year of work and hard times. Perhaps he was ready to release bare bones. However, the announcements to come were somehow even more exciting.
I am a walking ghost in my ragged clothes with my empty hands. I saw the parasites.
On March 31st, 2015, Whitey posted an update on Kickstarter and Facebook about bare bones. Sorta. He explained that 2013 through 2014 had been a difficult time for him, as he grew ill, developed a hearing loss and tinnitus, but had recovered and at this time was free as a bird. He stated that he had done the Kickstarter at the wrong time, as recording the album again and again had taken all of his Kickstarter money, so he had to look at other various places for funding for a bit, which eventually got him to where he was in 2015. Specifically from signing off to a 2-year Mazda advert of one of his new songs. He was fully funded and said he would use this money to start funding touring as well, which would start in European countries in June through July, while the US tour would take place during August through September. To make up for the lack of music released in previous years, with a substantial amount being actually recorded in that time frame, Whitey said he would release not one, but 2 albums this year. The first one was to be titled Pick Up Your Shadow, which was to cover more rougher, guitar-based music recorded years prior, and was to be the replacement for Bare Bones in the 6 album box sets backers were slated to receive, which would come out mid-summer. The single that teased this record came out the following day, which was titled Somebody Grab the Wheel. Talk about an energetic song! The guitars on this song have this warped effect, the drumming, how the song itself is very urgent. There are several instrumental and melodic parts that just come together perfectly in the mix. And, spoiler alert, it fucking slaps! And is one of my favorite songs from him. There were even plans to shoot a music video for this song, which was to be directed by Scarlett Carlos Clark. Though, unfortunately, this never came to be. Though sometimes, I imagine what the video would have been like to this song. The other album, Square Peg, Round World, which was an obvious twist on the phrase Square Peg, Round Hole, was to be more experimental and loaded with an eclectic list of influences, ranging from the Kinks to Lou Reed, Electric Light Orchestra, David Bowie from his Low era, and genres like acid house, electronica, and post-punk. This album was to cover the rest of his work from previous years and was to be released by Christmas. Whitey even stated it to be his last album for some time, so he intended it to be his absolute best. And just like Stay on the Outside, both of these records seem to suffer through development hell as well, unfortunately. I can't find much about this era anymore. Whitey was presumably still recording, but not a lot was coming from him in late 2015 and early 2016. Like the Bare Bones era, I'll do my very best to summarize everything that I do know or remember happening. In an unspecified time, possibly summer of 2015, Whitey posted the track listing for Pick Up Your Shadow. It contained 10 songs, one of them of which was already released, that being Somebody Grab the Wheel, the second song on the album, and 2 songs that he would eventually release as demos through Bandcamp later this year. Those songs being the first track and title track of the record, Pick Up Your Shadow. Pick Up Your Shadow. And the final song, In the End. The songs that were all sandwiched in between were as follows: Hay in Flames, Poison Apple, The Call, Let It Burn, No One Wants You Round When You're Down. It's actually No One Wants You Around When You're Down, but he just spelled it weird in this track listing for some reason. Let the Bad Times Roll, which he stated in 2013 would blow your mind. And Animal Kingdom, which sounds like a tribute to Disney World. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not funny. Though this track listing came out during summer, the actual album and box sets didn't. Neither did he start touring at all this year. Despite this fact, somewhere in October, Whitey posted the track listing for the second album, Square Peg, Round World. Surprisingly, it was going to be a 16-track double album from him, which contained the following songs: Somebody Grabbed the Wheel, strangely enough, Let It Burn, and wait a minute. Aren't some of these songs from Pick Up Your Shadow? Why the hell are they appearing on this album as well? Well, here's my theory. I think Whitey had actually scrapped Pick Up Your Shadow and just took the best tracks from that record and put them on this record that was going to come out later this year, Square Peg, Round World. This would explain why he decided to make this a double album, or even release the demos that were supposed to show up on Pick Up Your Shadow that didn't appear on the track listing for this album, like Pick Up Your Shadow and In the End. Anyways, the first 8 tracks for Square Peg were as follows: Somebody Grab the Wheel, Let It Burn, Don't Think Too Much, Poison Apples, Let the Bad Times Roll, Sunflowers, No One Wants You Around When You're Down, and A Riot on Memory Lane. The other 8 tracks for Round World were as follows: Lost With You, Half of Nothing, Land of Games, Okay Weirdos, Waiting to Start the Golden Age, The Call, surprisingly enough, No More Right or Wrong, and True Stories. Around this time, Whitey, like previously mentioned, started posting demos as well. Those songs being the first track and title track of the record, Pick Up Your Shadow, which is probably the best sounding demo that he's put out in this era, and In the End, which is, God, I can't even listen to this song without being emotional. But besides Pick Up Your Shadow and In the End, he also posted a demo named The Other Way, which was apparently going to nearly make the album but didn't. Then there's the demo, Civilization. Strangely enough, despite stating it originated from the Lost Summer sessions, it was recorded in 2013, 2 years after Lost Summer was recorded. Though it could have been an undeveloped demo for the album that was decidedly worked on years later. Anyways, interestingly enough, the guitar riff is very similar to the one found on Dog and Wolf, and some of the lyrics were even recycled for the song Lead Over Gold, both songs found on 7. In the End was posted on Bandcamp in mid-December 2015. And that was the last song he had released in a while, as sometime in April 2016, Whitey posted that a ton of outside factors and serious setbacks in his personal life had prevented Square Peg Round World from releasing when it was supposed to, and was still being delayed, but was going to eventually come out soon. And that was the last we directly heard from Whitey for years. There are sources from 2016 through 2019 that indicated he was still active. Some people theorized he was just taking a break from music for a while, until his personal life was on the right track. Still, this left many fans worried about him, while others felt disappointed in his decision to become radio silent. Still, there were many fans and Kickstarter backers who hoped he would return to music soon, especially since 2016 was being considered a pretty bad year. People then said the exact same thing each year that followed 2016, until 2020 came, where it seemed like nothing could get any worse. And then Whitey came back, and it made the year so much better. From corrupt political leaders around the world who are still in control, the media still feeding everyone biased propaganda and misinformation, systemic racism and police brutality still being an active thing for some inexplicable reason, and a pandemic that has been rapidly gaining more deaths and positive cases as the days go by. 2020 has not been a good year at all, and that's not even covering half the negative shit that has happened this year. In fact, the list might just be endless. However, as stupid as us humans can be, some positive things have come out of this year as well. Movements who have peacefully protested, people who are willingly wearing masks to ensure the safety of others, and some damn good music. A lot of good has come out of the music this year, too much to even list. However, the surprise for many was the return of the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Nathan Joseph White.
Hell yes, this is what we needed.
Before we go over this year for Whitey, let's go over what has all happened so far in his career. Throughout the 1990s, Whitey played in a string of acid house bands before settling in Shoreditch and soon establishing his own solo career. 2002 through 2005, Whitey teased his upcoming debut studio album with 3 singles: Leave 'Em All Behind, Why You Have to Be Me, and Nonstop / A Walk in the Dark. In March of 2005, he released this very album, The Light at the End of the Tunnel Is a Train. This album was eventually re-released in America in late 2006. The same year, he released a single that teased his upcoming record, Great Shakes. This single was titled Wrap It Up. In 2007, Great Shakes was leaked onto the internet, causing Whitey not to officially release the album for years. He released the Wrap It Up EP on iTunes, and announced an album named Stay on the Outside that would incorporate previous Great Shakes tracks, as well as new tracks. In 2008, the Maid of Night EP and individual single were released to tease this album's release this year. However, the album was delayed until it never released until this very year. In 2010, Whitey self-released a surprise album, Canned Laughter, onto the internet with little to no promotion. There's a planned physical release to coincide with the release of Canned Laughter Volume 2. These plans were soon cancelled. 2011 was the year Whitey removed his music from streaming services, teased his upcoming album, and got a Facebook page. In 2012, Whitey re-released his back catalog on Bandcamp, including the official release of Great Shakes and the surprise release of his new record, Last Summer. Late 2012 saw Whitey creating a Kickstarter page to fund his new album, physical releases, and touring, and eventually reached its goal. Throughout 2013 and 2014, Whitey was constantly recording and reinventing his new album, Bare Bones. 2015 saw the surprise release of Seven, a collection of 7 supposed rejects that covered many musical genres. The same year, Bare Bones was split into 2 albums, Pick Up Your Shadow and Square Peg Round World, before supposedly scrapping Pick Up Your Shadow and just turning Square Peg Round World into a double album. He also posted many demo tracks on Bandcamp as well. From 2016 to 2019, Whitey was silent for the most part, but was presumably still recording the new album. 2020 saw the surprise return of Whitey. In May of this year, he posted a picture with the caption, "New World, New Label, New Music," revealing he's still been busy this past year. He even has a son now. On this post, he stated he would re-release his album over on CD and vinyl. Not only that, but he stated he would also, every 2 weeks, release each album of his on Spotify, iTunes, and other streaming services. Now, before some of you roll your eyes, I never said Spotify was bad, as it does give artists a lot more exposure. However, sites like Bandcamp and physical releases are better for financially supporting artists. Anyways, these services and physical releases will offer remastered versions of these albums as well, just like his Bandcamp catalog. Not only does this give us a chance to revisit his back catalog yet again, but it also gives us a chance to get excited for these old releases like they're somehow new releases again, which is usually aided by teaser videos he posts on Facebook and his new Twitter and Instagram pages, which are very tightly edited. There's even songs of his that were completely redone, like Play Me and Who to Be, which is an added plus. The cherry to top it all off though, a new album titled, Now That's Why I Killed Music. A play on the phrase, Now That's Why I Call Music. Yep, that's right, this is the album we've been waiting for all this time. Looking very similar to Pick Up Your Shadow's track listing. Question is, was it worth the wait? Well, after multiple listens each day after day, my answer is absolutely. The album is a departure from the sonic variety of Seven, although this might be a turnoff to some. In my opinion, I think this album has some of his most aggressive and best songs to date. That being said, if you haven't listened to this album yet for some reason, and you're planning to, skip to this time in the video. I won't spoil every detail, as I encourage all of you to listen to it on your own and make your own observations and opinions. The album starts off with Whitey's 10,000th intro in a row, it seems. Though unlike others, it's kind of hard to explain this one without listening to yourself. Of course, then following that we have the actual first track, Somebody Grab the Wheel. And the following couple of tracks have a very similar style. Let the Bad Times Roll starts with the cinematic first section with twinkling keys, strings, and bass guitar, as well as a steady drum beat to back it all up. The track completely changes when a very dirty and distorted bass line finally comes in. Similarly, gritty and heavy guitars come into play, but the track really propels itself with an intense drum beat, and Whitey's sing-talking along with the guitar riff, while later in the song he uses falsetto vocals to sing the phrase, "Bad Times Roll," still proving that Whitey's delivery has drastically improved over time. The next track, Poison Apples, maintains the energy of the previous songs, while adding some really cool effects to the guitars. Soon enough, the track takes advantage of Whitey's ever-so-present catchy synth melodies. The use of harmonized vocals in this track is especially notable, and the drumming is just straight up intense. Near the middle of this album, things start getting even more intriguing with the track, No One Wants You Around When You're Down. Unlike the energetic and rocking first third of this record, this track, although still lively, slows things down a bit. It's another Whitey track with a catchy piano part, accompanied by a bluesy guitar riff. Horns start taking over a minute in, while the drumming performances on this track are very spirited. The best thing about this track is the fact that it contains the best elements of tracks like One by One, and combines it with the jazz swagger of Count Those Freaks. The lyrics deal with Whitey's introspection of his own loneliness caused by his down feelings and emotions, which provokes other people to ignore or avoid him. The next song contains a sample of American researcher Jordan Maxwell. Both this sample and Whitey's lyrics discuss the topics of media, entertainment, and conforming to these mediums, while not thinking for yourself. Kind of similar to Send Out the Clowns, in my opinion. The guitars on this track have even more of a blues influence, while incorporating elements of garage rock as well. Though the meaning of this song is still being speculated by the community, Mountains of Ash seems to address the subject of war and its effects on people and places. This is one of the more cinematic songs on the album, using strings in an industrial sense and beats as well. It should be noted that there's a refrain in this song that states, "Play in Flames," which might have indicated that this song was Play in Flames from the Pick Up Your Shadow track listing, but was actually supposed to be titled Play in Flames instead. Finally, this instrumental of this song was originally a demo track by UK experimental electronic musician, This Is LDM. However, Whitey's additional instrumentation and songwriting essentially made this into what we now know as Mountains of Ash. Despite how much raw energy is in the album, it also contains some of Whitey's finest ballads as well. The minute-long piano interlude, Flowers of London, is a short and simplistic, but also strangely catchy tune as well. The closing track and the end starts with simple guitar and organs before switching to bolting drums, distorted guitar, and ending off with piano and strings. The lyrics are somber, yet still tries to be optimistic, with lines like, "If you're still alive, you could still change." Yet the added lines at the end of the song give it an even deeper, nihilistic meaning as well. In the end, all you have is worth nothing. In the end, it was all up to you. In the end, it's a game where you give or take, and if you took more than you gave, then you lose. Pick Up Your Shadow also has quite a few added parts as well, yet still maintains its anthemic nature, especially in its chorus. The album upon its release has already resonated with old and new fans alike, with many stating it lived up to the hype and weight given. But will this be the last of Whitey? Not necessarily. Just recently, he released an extended version of this album with 2 bonus tracks, a remastered version of the Civilization demo he dropped years ago, now titled Civilization Part 2, along with another track, Animal Kingdom, from the Pick Up Your Shadow track listing years ago as well. If Animal Kingdom was featured on the standard edition of this album, it would probably be the heaviest song on it. It also has one of his best vocal performances to date, and is probably in my top 3 from this album. In addition, when asked on Facebook about No More Right or Wrong appearing in any future releases, Whitey responded saying that there will be a winter album that features this very song, which is extremely exciting news that every fan is anticipating for. Just when we all thought this year for Whitey's music couldn't get better. Though, to conclude this documentary, although Nathan White has endured some hardships and difficulties throughout his career, it has all led to this moment now, where he's perfectly content with his position and his career, which everyone is grateful for. Sometimes your favorite musician just needs time off to come back bigger and better than ever. Hopefully I got a few people interested in listening to this extremely talented and underrated musician through this very video documentary. Anyways, I gotta listen to the new album now. Catch you guys later. See you on the flip side, and stay on the outside. Or inside, cause, Corona.
Take a long, hard look in the mirror.
can change. You may rise up as light as a feather, or you may sink like a stone. But we're stuck on the same ride together. Oh, you are not the only one. You are not the only one. You are not the only one. In the end, all you have is worth nothing. In the end, it was all up to you. In the end, it's a game where you give or take. And if you took more than you gave, then you lose.
ダメだね、ダメよ、ダメなのよ。あんたが好きで好きすぎて、どれだけ強いお酒でも歪まない思い出